Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of Generational Curse Words.
I'm Mustafaa and with me is Olivia. How's it going, Olivia?
It's going really good. The
Okay.
sun's been staying up, so I'm really
hmm
happy about that. It's staying brighter outside longer.
I can never tell when we're switching from Eastern Standard to Daylight Savings or which is which,
Mm-hmm.
um, or why. I always find it interesting how we manipulate time, when we choose to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's great to have it light a little bit longer in the day. I still get up at the same time, so what used
Mm-hmm.
to be 6 o'clock is now 5 o'clock. I'm going to wake up anyway until my body kind of adjusts to it. Um, so what's been happening in your world? What's good?
What has been happening in my world? Not a whole lot. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Parenthood, so chores,
Uh-huh.
lots of laundry,
Uh-huh.
picking up toys 3,000 times a day.
What's the most
Um,
amazing thing he's done?
What's the most amazing thing that
hmm
they've done? He
Okay.
is, for all intents and purposes, walking.
Okay.
Some days he'll just we'll position him to walk, and he'll just be like, "Nah, just fall to the ground and crawl." So we're at that phase right now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and then our oldest is talking.
Okay.
He was at that phase where everything just sounds like gibberish except for every
Mm-hmm.
3 to
Mm-hmm.
4 words, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's like, "What did he say?" And it's so
Mm-hmm.
funny because he sounds like us. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
he sounds like us. So
Uh-huh.
even and it I'm starting to even realize, kids will have you check yourself without even the other day, his little brother took a toy and he, as clear as day, was like, "Give it back." That's me.
Mm.
That
Mhm.
is me. "Give it back.
Mhm.
I had it
Mhm.
first." That's me. "Give it back."
Mhm.
He had it first. When he's done,
Mhm. Mhm.
that's me. And he's
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
"Come on, this and that, this and that." So it's so funny because
Uh-huh.
these kids are Cameroonian, but I am going to crack up laughing if one of them has a Southern accent, especially since they're raised in the DMV. I am
Yeah.
going to my soul is going to smile if one of these
Uh-huh.
children has a Southern accent. So,
That's
um,
funny. That's funny.
yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing because in the training, I'm often saying, or we're often coming to the place where we understand that that children are born with intelligence. We
Mhm.
think there's a tendency to think that because children can't speak or because they cry, because they can't talk,
Yeah.
that they don't know. They equate that with like not knowing or not being intelligent,
Mhm.
not understanding that you can't even learn unless you're intelligent. That
Yeah.
intelligence is that you're actually born with that quality. So when they actually do start expressing themselves and I think it's just kind of refreshing. And like you say, and then when you hear
Mhm.
yourself, you be like, wow, because you don't know you sound like that
Exactly.
until they start imitating. I remember my sons, even when they were teenagers, their favorite pastime was just to do imitations of how I walk, how I talk, how I laugh. And it took me a couple of beats to say, I do that, don't I? I do that, and kids will have you down pat. I mean, they can
Yeah.
do the perfect, impression of you. So that's great. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. It
I
goes by
am.
quickly. It
I
goes by
know.
quickly.
I was watching my guilty pleasure. Oh, it might be
hmm
a guilty treasure. I'm low key obsessed. But I love the Housewives franchise. I know it's
uh-huh.
trash. Bravo ain't
Uh-huh.
shit. I'm well aware.
Uh-huh.
Well
Uh-huh.
aware. But we pay this cable bill, so I'm gonna watch it.
Right?
So I was watching it, and one of the women on Real Housewives is sending her daughter off to college.
hmm
When I tell you, mind you, our kids are about to be 1 and 3, actually,
hmm
within the next
hmm
couple of months. When I
Mhm.
tell you they're nowhere near the date that we're going to drop them off at Howard University, because why would they go anywhere else?
Why?
But they're
Yeah.
nowhere near, that time.
Uh-huh.
And I've shed some thug tears
Uh-huh.
just thinking that
Just
one
thinking.
day that
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
going to go off to college. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and I know
Yeah.
there are some moms, especially with sons, that they get sad thinking about their children, like, marrying, branching off,
Mhm.
finding their own, whatever,
Mhm.
whatever. I think that's beautiful,
Mhm.
honestly. I think that's
Mhm.
beautiful. The audacity that I'm about to have my kids' wedding. The
Right.
fact that I
Right.
raised kids that are marryable. Are you kidding me? And this
Right.
Drake is on a one-man mission to ruin all romantic interactions, okay? So the smile and the
Uh,
pride that I'm gonna have at their weddings will be perfect.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I they gotta go to college,
Yeah.
they gotta leave.
Yeah.
And that's my
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
that is my one rule. Like, everyone has like family rules. My
Mhm.
one rule is you have to go you
Mhm.
got to go to college, you got to live on
Yeah.
campus. It's
Yeah.
just one of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things that, and I can't explain what you're going to get out of it, because everyone gets something out of it, but you
And it's
have to
interesting.
go. You have to live on
Yeah.
campus. You can't stay
Yeah.
at home.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because my oldest came home one day when they were still in, I guess, middle school or whatever, and they had talked to some friends, and some friends said, they were talking about going to college, and they asked my daughter if she's going to college. And then she came home and she said, Daddy, she said, when they asked me the question, we having a conversation, she said, it never occurred to me that there was any other option. She said, when they
Mhm.
asked the questions, like, I'm like, isn't that what we do? Of course we're going to college, right? And then later on, 10 years later, my son, he said, Dad, why do I need to go to college? Why
Mhm.
should I go to college? And just like you said, I don't know, how they're going to develop or what they're going to get out of it. And I really could not come up with an answer at the time. And I
Mhm.
simply said to him, I said, well, Lisanne, I can't convince you as to why you should go. I said, but I will tell you this. It's one of those things that if you don't go, you'll know the difference. I said, I said, trust me on this one. And it really just came down to that. I said, I want
Mhm.
you, just because I could not, I raised him legitimately being able to ask questions and deserving of a legitimate answer. And when he said, well, I'm just going to rack up some debt, I don't need a college degree to get a job. I mean, he
Mhm.
went down a whole list of things which were very sound, which I could not contradict. You don't have to have a degree to succeed in this world. I said, but the college
Yeah.
experience, I said, I've never steered you wrong or anything. I just want you to trust me on this. And he went, and he had student loans. But he thanked me. He said, Dad, he said, you were right. I said, you see how I couldn't have explained it? He said, yeah, as he's the experience. He's experienced, and I'm just glad that we had the relationship enough that he could trust. So I can say that all five of mine have gone to college. And
Mhm.
you're right. Aside from the academics, aside from the credential, aside from the experience of being with people of other minds, of other cultures, of other ways of thinking, that there's a time where you can actually be creative, and you can be about looking at the world, and not necessarily be in the throngs of it yet. So there's a lot more to it. And I think everyone should have
Mhm.
that experience that they can. And I think we should stop that whole uh, what was that dialogue that started about 20 years ago? Every kid ain't college material. You shouldn't
Mhm.
be for trying to force. And I think young people should decide.
Even when I think about my college experience, I would love to make it a rule that, like, you have to go to college out of state.
Mm,
And I think that's too much
mm-hmm,
because
mm,
everyone is different. Everyone
yeah,
is
yeah,
different. And some people
yeah.
really do need to know that their parents are right up the road.
Yep, yep,
That's just the reality. But
yep.
um, I will say that for me, and it's just having that experience, that the first thing that I did as an adult was take a chance it kind of
Mhm.
set the baseline for my life. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so, and it's set me on a path that has made my life something that I like. It's not for
Right.
everyone, but
Right.
the idea, how do I say this? In life, personally, I don't give myself the option to play it safe for too long. I'm
Mhm.
always looking for the next thing to experience, or
Right.
the next phase, like
Right.
progression, taking a leap, jolting, jumping is like,
Mhm.
it's just
Mhm.
my thing. For me,
Mhm.
it gives me the most satisfaction. I'm more
Mhm.
proud of myself when I'm able to accomplish the thing that the average person will be like, girl, what? Like, you're gonna do
Mhm.
what? Like, that
Mhm.
fulfills me. But beating the
Mhm.
odds fulfills me. It really does.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah, I will say that's what college did for me. It unlocked that part of me that makes me kind of like, and mind you, I'm not here doing nothing crazy, but it makes me
Right.
addicted to not playing it safe. It makes me addicted
Yeah.
to taking calculated risks.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think to some extent, really, um, that's to me that's the more natural way of being. Um,
mm,
because the playing it safe and the design, doing everything by design, um, I think that's the majority of the complacent world. Um, I think I mean, even when they map out the life for you, okay, so it's you go
mm,
to school, you do this, you do this, you graduate from college, you get a job. And in my generation before, you stay at that job for 30, 40 years and
mm,
retire, and and then you go, sailing around the world or whatever. And so that becomes then the formula. And people even begin to kind of pattern their life after it. I should have my
yeah,
house by this age, I have this by this age. And there's nothing outside of that. There's nothing outside of that to say, okay, I want to achieve this. I want to create this. I want to design this. I want to experience that. I mean, so I think, and to me, that's a more natural way being
mm,
human beings and how life is. But I think we, kind of get canned into the convenient formula of um, of what's really expected of us, and we end up not really enjoying life. And the reason I say that is because when you think about it, here's the thing: if when we articulate things that we enjoy, if there's nothing unusual about it, then do we really enjoy it?
yeah,
So like when
mm-hmm,
people say, okay, I'm going to go to Hawaii. I mean, some people go to Hawaii for vacation, or some people go to Florida because a lot
mm,
of people do the exact same thing. So is it special? Is it
mm,
different? Or is it really routine? And does that mean, and if our lives are routinely the same, then to me that speaks to something, because we're all
mm,
different people and we're here to fulfill different goals that we choose.
mm,
And when our choices come down to something that everybody's choosing, then are
yeah,
we really choosing that?
mm,
Is that is that really our choice? So um our word for today is punishment. Is
yeah,
punishment. You know, working at DJS, Department of Juvenile Services, and looking at what's happening in the news and the world today when they're saying young people, with the way they're acting out, they need to be held accountable. And
mm,
oftentimes in the agency, we say, what do we mean when they say they should be held accountable? Um, and while we're trying to busy have young people develop and everything, really people are saying, well, they need to pay for what they've done. They need to be punished, you
mm,
know. And so when I'm thinking about punishment, what do we mean? What is punishment? All the way back to even a kid. If a kid touches something, we tell them not to touch it, or they pick up something, we tell them put it down, and they disobey. You know, punishment. What is it when we talk about punishment?
mm.
And who does it serve? Why does it, why does it exist? And what is punishment? What do we think of punishment?
I know, and I just, there's something troubling about an external force acting on you based on an internal choice that you made.
Mm,
Like before you
mm,
do something, whether it's positive or negative, you had to have an internal conversation with yourself and an
mhm,
agreement. And then
mhm,
for some external force, whether it be um, a parent, a
mhm,
teacher, or even a police officer or
mhm.
parole officer, for your future to, for a certain amount of time, whether it be a 30-second spanking or a
Mhm.
30-year prison sentence, is in their hands.
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
this was between me and me.
Right,
Like,
right, right, right.
what are you doing here? Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah. And I
ooh.
don't even think we think about it that way. I think, um, and I say we, and I always use that term loosely when I'm talking about society, because we think about it as the offense that you commit or whatever you're doing. It's against those external forces. It's against other people. It's against
Mhm.
ideas. It's against things because we were recently doing the history of juvenile services and kiddie prisons and all of that, and we were looking at even the crimes. They're called it'll come to me, um, non-statutory, or there's certain crimes that only children can commit. So, for
Mhm.
instance, to run away was a crime, and a kid would be taken from the family and locked up for running away. Of
Mhm.
course, an adult can never be convicted for running
Yeah.
away. Not going to school is a crime. Um, and of course, an adult would never be locked up for not going to school. Um, so there's certain crimes that are considered, or even though you're doing it yourself and it's not really involving anyone else, the
Mhm.
way it's looked at is as if you're committing a crime against society. In fact, whenever a person goes before a judge, it's always the state or the city or the
Yeah.
country, the United States versus this person.
Yeah.
It's like it's like the universe is against you. And what you've done, essentially is just, like you said, it begins with an internal conversation, um, that in reality, only you can resolve because you see the cause and effect, the result or whatever
Mhm.
of what your choice is. Um, And so there's nothing really on the outside that someone can do that brings resolution to
Yeah.
what you've done, except pain,
Mhm.
except pain. And again, it doesn't bring resolution.
Yeah.
It creates a trauma response. Um,
Yeah, that's what I said, with pain, with the
yeah,
hopes
yeah,
of
yeah,
creating a
yeah.
trained response,
A trained
a
response. Yeah,
response that doesn't even come from you. Like,
yeah,
it creates
yeah,
people that perform behaviors that aren't even attached to their identity.
yeah,
Um, and that's, to me, that's scary, because
yeah,
then it we teach that from a very young age when we spank children for things.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
as parents, oftentimes we train our children through corporal punishment. That's what it
yeah,
is, corporal
yeah.
punishment.
Yep, absolutely.
Whenever
Hmm.
I say corporal punishment, I think about the the death penalty, and I
Yeah,
know that's
yeah. Well,
capital.
and that's capital punishment.
Yeah,
Corporal,
that's what
yeah,
I'm saying.
and,
Yeah.
yeah, and corporal is anything that involves the body. The
Okay.
corpus, anything that involves the body, the corpus is corporal punishment.
I can always
So
count
if
on you for a good Latin root now, because now
yeah,
I will never forget. Now I
yeah,
will
because
never get
right,
confused.
right. I've always, because like, there'll be discussions like in school. I've gone to after school programs.
Mhm.
And one time I saw this teacher. I can't remember what the kids did, but he said, "Okay, arms up," and everybody were holding their arms up, and they had to hold their arms up in overhead and hold them in the air. And he was doing that as a means of punishment. I walked. I said, "You can't do that." I said, "You can't do
They
that."
did that
I
to me
told him,
at a daycare when I was at a
"That's
church
yeah, that's
daycare.
corporal." I said, "It's corporal punishment. You can't do that."
Mhm.
Excuse me. And he was upset. And of course, I'm just a after school program person. He told the principal, and she called a meeting between um, him and me, because when I walked over, he didn't tell them. I told the kids to put their hands down, so he felt I
Mhm.
was interfering. And so when the principal asked what happened, I said, "What he done?" I said he had them hold their hands up. I said, "That's illegal." She turned to the teacher and said, "That is illegal." You know, that's it's corporal punishment.
Mhm.
To make a kid stand in a corner, it's corporal punishment.
Mhm.
Anything that involves distress, discomfort to the body as a means of punishment
Mhm.
is corporal punishment. Yeah. And like you say, all it does is it causes stress. It's not related to whatever it is you've done. So there's no lesson in it to learn. There's no logical connection.
Mhm.
It's arbitrary. It's, as you say, what somebody outside of you decides the penalty should
Mhm.
be. Um, and it doesn't work.
Mhm.
It simply doesn't work.
It
It doesn't.
it really doesn't. And
Mhm.
the effect that you think it has on the other person isn't even the effect. It creates it allows you to lie to yourself
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
making a huge change.
Yeah.
Meaning you inflict pain, you get a
Hmm.
trained response,
Hmm.
and even as a parent, you spank your child for doing something, they act better and you think that you did something, when
Right.
in actuality, they just know to act a certain way in front of you. And parents
Exactly.
will experience this all the time when their child is acting a certain way at home until you get a call from the teacher and you're like, wait, so
Hmm.
he did what? She
Right.
said what? She did like
Wow.
who? That betrayal because you thought
Right.
that your measures of punishment were creating
Right.
a positive human being when you all you did was teach them to behaviorally compartmentalize.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that trait follow once that trait is put into a child, it follows them throughout their lives. And so
Yeah.
even as adults, they'll be having friendships, interactions, all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, who they are isn't even who they are to the people that they know that they are building friendships, social circles with,
Yeah.
relationships,
Yeah.
families,
Yeah.
marriages. Like, that is a dangerous trait to teach, and it all stems from punishment.
From punishment. Yeah. I'll never forget. I was doing parent training, and first of all, I said, it doesn't work, and everybody looked at me strange. I said, well, if it worked, you would only have to do it once. And then everybody like, I said, yeah. How many times have you had to spank your child, and how many times have you spanked them for the same thing? I said,
Mm,
so that should tell you it doesn't work. And I had one parent say, well, Mustafa, um, I whip my boys because I don't want them to end up in prison. I said, it's interesting you should say that, because if you go to prison a lot, because you'll find that the majority of them have been whipped or spanked or abused in some kind of way, which is part and parcel why, the trauma that attributed them to being there. I said, but even more importantly, the more you
mhm,
spank them, the more resilient they become, the tougher they become, the less caring. It gets to the point where um, they become hard. I said, and resistant. And she was almost in tears. She says, so my whippings are actually, I say, yeah, you're actually preparing them for prison.
mhm.
So you're actually preparing them to be able to tolerate and withstand, your harsh treatment. I was thinking, it just occurred to me, um, a friend of mine was having a discussion with her friends, and they were talking about the last time they got a whipping. And it's funny how people can remember the last time, because there's always something that occurs. Like in her story, the last time she got one, she refused to cry and she started laughing. I think she
Hmm,
might have been 15 and she just started laughing. And her mother just did not know what to do with that.
mhm,
And she stopped. The mother just stopped abruptly and just walked away. It was almost like, is this kid gone crazy? She just started laughing. So it just got to a point. She was like, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing?
mhm.
Um, So it's usually something very odd happens on that last one. Either the kid doesn't cry, or the kid stands up and
They
strikes
fight back.
back.
I
They
know,
fight
yeah.
back.
That's what mhm.
People remember that last one, and it's interesting because that last one, even whatever happens, it speaks to the idea that this should not be happening.
Mm,
You know, this should not be happening, and this won't happen again. You know, but yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't teach. And you're right. It follows. It follows for
mm,
life, and I think for me, um, just kind of understanding the context of it again. It's uh, I mean, we know for us as a people, it's something that's a drawback, throwback, whatever, from slavery. You
mm,
know, us being captive and being whipped, and parents trying to train their children to act in such a way that they would be able to
mm.
um, survive slavery. Um, because I know a lot of people think culturally for African Americans, for people of color, that this is just something that is part of our tradition,
Yeah.
when in fact it's not.
Mm.
It's not.
I mean,
It's
it's a system. Like
yeah.
it's a systematic practice.
Hmm.
It's not a surprise that everyone was spanked. You know it was adopted because
Hmm.
no one had a conversation with them in their households and all came up with the same solution
Right.
of spanking. And we can trace it back even when you study like even if you, when you study Africa in antiquity,
Hmm.
the responses to negative behavior sound more like our trending justice
Exactly.
restorative
Exactly.
justice movement. And I think
Hmm.
we had an offline conversation,
Hmm.
and we talked about exile, and I think you were talking to someone that was representing exile as if it was something negative or
Yeah.
cruel
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
harsh or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And first, like, even when you read the Bible, right, for our religious people,
Hmm.
everyone that underwent an exile was better afterwards. Like,
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
exile is kind of an extreme form of timeout. If we're
Yeah.
talking about young
Yeah.
people, it's
Yeah.
a forced period of isolation.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so the idea is that you had a you and you conversation when you
Hmm.
before you did this bullshit. You're gonna
Hmm.
have a you and you conversation
Hmm.
over there. You know, you are going to have a
Hmm.
forced period of isolation. And this even goes back to the advice that I always give my beautiful ladies. We're coming off of well, not we're coming a little bit off of Valentine's Day,
Hmm.
where there's just way too many, especially way too many black women disappointed on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Like, you know that we are something, okay, label or not, and you know you're supposed to do something today, and you just didn't do it for whatever reason, whether you had
Right.
another woman was a priority, or you just lazy, or now you're trying to act like Valentine's Day is a religion that you don't believe in. Like, it's just so ridiculous. So I tell, and even outside of Valentine's Day, whenever a man has a conversation with himself and does something
Hmm.
negative,
Hmm.
leave him alone.
Hmm.
Translation, he needs to go to exile. He
Hmm.
needs a forced period of isolation because there are certain wrongs that you can only right in the dark, in the
Right.
trenches, by yourself. Because if you stay here with me and we're trying to solve this out, you always gonna have something else to fight against and react to or
Right.
gaslight or whatever. Leave that man alone. That's what I mean. A forced period of isolation. And I know people say that, like, there's a difference between the silent treatment, because silent
Right.
treatment is evil because you can see me.
Right.
Okay? You can see me and I can see you, and you act like you in here alone. That is evil. Okay? That is extreme invalidation of my
Uh,
human existence. No
right.
contact, however.
Mm-hmm.
You over there, I'm over here. You don't see me, I don't see you. And
Right.
you can only hear your own thoughts and you can only hear your own
Right.
voices. So that's what I'm saying. Like, even when you look at the way that we operated before we came into contact with, I don't care if it was slavery,
Mhm.
imperialism,
Mhm.
colonialism, it's all the same. Even when you look at the hood in
Mhm.
the US, they have an imperial relationship with the US government, even though we're in the same
Right.
country.
Yeah, you're right.
It's all the same. So, even when you look at those old ways of reacting to negative behavior, it's not harsh. Like they weren't,
Yeah.
like it wasn't,
Yeah.
"Imma beat you until you act the way that I want you to act in my eyes." And
Mhm.
even when we look at that's our method as a people, but even when we look
Mhm.
at, white people beating us, it was to create a brand new person
Right.
in
Right.
their image,
Right.
or
Right.
that they approve of, and that is even
Yeah.
a spanking, it is it's a white thing. It's
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
us thing.
Right. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I'm just remembering my mom when I was doing a training before, again, a youth development training, and we were talking about the difference between punishment, consequences, and discipline. Consequences being we allow people to, learn the logical consequence of their actions and learn from their actions, learn from mistakes. The
Mhm.
consequences are directly related to whatever it is you've done. And of course, discipline is to understand why a young person is doing a particular thing and to give them a particular opportunity or an action or an exercise or an activity where they strengthen whatever needs to be strengthened within them so they can grow with respect to whatever it is that's they're trying to develop in. So understanding those differences and I remember when we had a conversation one time in the middle of a training, called up my mom and asked my mom, "Did you beat Mustafa?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "I did." She said, "I whipped him growing up." She said, "But I did that because that's the only thing I knew." She
Mhm.
said, "That's how I was raised." She said, "I didn't know any better." She says, "And when you know better, you do better."
Mhm.
And for me, that was it was confirming
Mhm.
because she said, I understand his work and what he does right now, and if I had known better, I would have done differently. And so then everyone's like in awe, my mother being definitely old school,
Mhm.
uh, pre, baby boomer or whatever, to have come to that realization. And I think um, part of it, of where we are, is sometimes we go so far down the road of something that we do
Mhm.
that we kind of become like committed and we don't know how to pull back from it.
Mhm.
Um, Even when it's not corporal, even when it's what is it parents do a lot now and kids can't stand it. Oh, when they take something away as a means of punishment. So for
Mhm.
instance, you got an F on your report card, so you can't go to that dance. As if going to the
Yeah.
dance, not going to the dance is going to bring your grade up, you know.
Mhm.
So it's either, corporal or it's denial of something, no supper tonight or no dessert, and then some kind
Mhm.
of way we're supposed to learn from that and and change our behavior,
Mhm.
and no consideration as to why we did what we did. you
Yeah.
know
And
you know
I'm glad you say that because it's no consideration of what we refer to as the youth needs.
right.
And so even with teenagers, and I used to be this way. It's so crazy how you won't
Mhm.
even have kids and you can't wait to have kids to be petty with the punishments, you know?
Right.
And there was once
Right.
upon a time where I was just like, yo, my kid ever disrespect me, they're gonna pick up their phone and call somebody, they're gonna hear doo doo doo, you know.
Yeah.
We can't complete your call as died.
Right.
And
Right.
so, and I had to heal. Let's just say
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
with no consideration of the youth needs, because a common punishment nowadays is you're not performing well in school, you're not listening at home, you're not doing XYZ, I'm gonna take the phone.
Take the phone.
But um what is it? Belonging and membership,
Belonging and membership.
or
Yeah.
even belonging and membership, and for people who haven't taken the AYD training, which we need to start, we're going to start offering those
Yeah.
virtually. The need to connect with others is a human need. It's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
So if I was using my phone to connect with my friends,
Hmm.
and I don't know, got upset, raised my voice at you, used some choice words, and now you took my phone away. I need to connect with my friends by any means
Means necessary.
necessary.
Yep.
And so even, if I'm a parent in that situation, I would much rather you connect with your friends from the safety of our home to now you have to get crafty and leave the house to connect,
Yeah. Yeah.
with your friends.
Yeah.
And now me, because I'm a parent, my number one need for you is safety. Now
Right.
that's being threatened, and you don't have your
Yeah.
phone. I have no way of
Yeah.
contacting you. If I go into your room and you're not there and I thought you were,
Yeah.
like, what now? And you practice whatever you practice, you get good at, no matter what.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. Hmm.
that 11, 12, 13-year old that you always heard them before they snuck out the house. One day
Hmm.
they're gonna be 16.
Yeah.
One day they're gonna be 17. One day they're
Yeah.
gonna get real good at being where they're not supposed to be. And you're
Yeah.
not going to know it until something that threatens their
There's
safety is at
safety. Yeah.
play. Whether
Yeah.
it's an archetype of an R. Kelly man
Hmm.
trying to make them, their girlfriend, or
Yeah.
a police officer that rolled up on them and now they're at the precinct. Like, we have to, when our kids do negative things, um we have to take the human needs
Hmm.
into account.
Yeah. 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 And by extension, what happens is when they become offenders on that level, we do the exact same thing. In other words, we isolate them, we put them in places, we detain them, we lock them up, and
Mm,
therefore the need for belonging and membership is completely cut off. And then when kids can't connect with family or friends at that time, then we have within these institutions, we have fights, we have trauma, we
mhm,
have they turn on each other, and again,
mhm,
because we have removed them from uh, having their developmental human needs met and put them in a situation where all of these needs are cut off. And again, we call this punishment. We call this being accountable. We expect there to be some kind of change, and all we're doing is creating a human being that's experiencing a level of trauma that they really
mhm,
cannot. I mean, it almost becomes impossible to turn away from or to come away
mhm,
from. And then we have recidivism, because we have now created a criminal. We have now,
mhm,
because the need was never met, and our whole position is, well, forget the need. You just shouldn't do it. You
mhm.
shouldn't act this way, or you shouldn't. So it does complicate. It really, really complicates.
Yeah.
Complicated. So and I think like you said, restorative justice. You know, is the key, because it addresses, not only does it address the need, because it gives an opportunity for a person to articulate what they did, why they did it,
Mhm,
and so that we can get at the need. And if it is something that affects the community, there's an opportunity to
mhm.
to fix it, you know
Yeah.
so it kind of takes us to the way back, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many ways that we can apply, because even when I think of
Yeah.
the way back, right?
Hmm.
Um, with youth
Hmm.
development, the Bronfenbrenner's ecological model is always in our back in the background of things. So
Right.
our young people the young people that we encounter, that we see before us, whether they be our students, our children, our family members, whatever, we're still in a bubble that's in a bubble that's in a bubble that's in a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so even when I think of this country and the punitive nature of this country and the way back for that, like, let's be very clear.
Mm-hmm.
The beginnings of America, even up until now,
Mm-hmm.
is a criminal enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, we have to, like you said, we have to acknowledge the truth of things.
Right. Right.
It's criminals creating criminals to
Mm-hmm.
punish as criminals.
Right.
And so there has to be systems. Orchestrating systems is the easy part after we reorchestrate the environment.
Right.
There has to be a way back for the way that this country was set up,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
we have to be completely honest that the things that young people are being locked up for are the very things, or not even compared to the crimes that happened to set up this system to begin with.
Yeah.
There has
Yeah.
to be a way back from
Yeah.
that as well. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not monetary reparations.
It's not. It's not. And we have to admit that as far removed as we think what young people do today is from that original, I call it the original crime, that original criminality, as far, it is still, um it's there's still a direct correlation.
Mhm.
It's still the result of that. There's still a connection with that, and you're absolutely right. um I had this conversation when I was teaching an eighth grade class, and they were talking about, again, they were talking about slavery. Well, I wasn't a slave master. My people, I wasn't there. I wasn't. So to have eighth graders understand, um, uh, generational responsibility, to have them
Mhm.
understand how, and I just used a house as a way. I say, if a man came and stole another man's house and lived in it, and then he had children, and then his children inherited the house, and their children inherited the house, and generation up. I said, at which point does this house belong to the person who stole it? And the kids understand, at no point. I said, right. If somebody
Mhm.
steals your bike, and they have your bike, and they give it to somebody else, and give it to somebody, no matter how many times they give that bike away, it was still your bike, right?
Mhm.
And I said, and even though it's not the last person's fault that the bike was stolen, um, the last person knows that it's stolen. And the question is,
Mhm.
can they respond to the idea? Can they do something about it? And that means, are you able to respond? So if you are able to respond, you are responsible. You're responsible. It doesn't mean it's your fault, but you are responsible for it, because you
Mhm.
would not have it had that person not stole it.
Yeah. And
So,
in
and
this
it's like,
day, at this time right now, you are still part of the problem.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's a hard nut to crack. But if you ever want to have peace, and this is what I would tell my eighth graders, I had like an international class. I had people there from all cultures and everything. And as if we ever going to have peace in the world, the kind of peace that we want. And I tell white folks this when in the training, I said, don't you want to, aren't you tired of this whole thing? Don't you just want there to be peace and want to be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, well, then there has to be a balance. There
Mhm.
has to be a repairing. There has to be, I said, because it won't go away simply because we deny it, or just
Yeah.
because we fake it. I said, there has to be, I said, everything says that there's fairness,
Mhm.
there's karma, there's, for every action is equal. I mean, science, everything tells us that there has to be balance. So
Mhm.
if you ever want that, then we have to have um, we have to have a balance,
Mhm.
and there has to be retribution, and there has to be a repairing of it. And even all of those who are touting restoration or restorative
Mhm.
justice, yeah, you're speaking what actually has to happen, even throughout the world.
Mhm.
What we've done all over the world, there has to be a restoration. There has to be a move, toward restoring and
Yeah.
repairing. Um, um, And if we don't, then as much as people suffer for it today, then your children, descendants of those perpetrators, are owed the guilt
Yeah.
that they're trying to escape from it. They're owed the shame.
Mhm.
They're owed all of that, and we don't get to not talk about it. We don't get to skip over. You don't get to be happy, and you don't get the privilege of not being responsible for the
Mhm.
legacy, that your folks have passed down.
And
So
that's the thing about karma. And we've talked in previous episodes that karma is not a tit for tat thing.
right, right,
It's a natural, universal balancing
yeah,
act that
yep,
jolts things forward.
yep,
And no one can decide when karma is going to collect and
yep,
how much karma is
and
going
how
to
much,
collect.
right?
And we see this in storytelling traditions all over the world,
Hmm. Hmm.
that the longer you take to make things right,
Yeah,
the more you have to pay,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
more the more the victim, and I'll put that in
right.
quotes,
In
the
quotes.
more the
Hmm.
victim collects. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
even with this whole reparations conversation in this country, people are trying to put
Hmm.
it off, put it off, put it off, put it off.
Hmm.
Yes, reparations, if we're talking monetary, is
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of money, a
yeah,
lot of money, but it's only a lot of money because y'all waited
yep.
this long.
Yeah,
And there's going to become a point in time where even money won't
yep,
satisfy
yep,
the
yep,
karmic
yep,
rule.
yep, yeah, yep.
And white people know this because y'all be writing all these twisted, crazy stories where people are
Right.
sacrificing their kids and their firstborns and feeding
Yeah,
princesses to
yeah,
dragons and
yeah,
bringing out Angela Bassett to make a horrible movie make sense. Like, y'all know this.
yeah,
So what
yeah,
you waiting
yeah, yeah,
for?
yeah. I
uh,
always say that, and I'll say this here, um, the European, the white man, the white mind, or whatever, has been an existential threat to himself and to
mhm,
everyone else. To himself and to everyone else. And why are you your biggest enemy? Why, and unless you face it, unless and I don't know that you can. I think karma's going to do what karma is going to do, and like you said, um for any individual to try to exact is just going to be revenge. And I tell people
mhm,
all the time, like when I'm working with young people, he said, well, I'm gonna pay the joker back, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. I said, well, that's revenge. I said, and karma belongs to the universe. It's going to set it right. And if
mhm,
you decide that you're going to do something, all you're doing is creating karma for yourself.
mhm. Yeah.
So, and that's how that cycle
Revenge
happens, because
creates the
yeah,
illusion of a finish
okay,
line.
yeah, it does, it
It
does,
really does.
absolutely,
And it's
yeah,
not revenge is not
right.
closure. It's
Which is
the
why,
opposite of
which is why,
closure.
as a people, we have not extracted it.
Mhm.
Because we know that as a people, is first of all, it's not in our nature. But as a people, we know
Mhm.
that we can't. There's no way we can exact, a
Mhm.
payment from you by force or by revenge that is going to recompense,
Mhm.
our people for everything, and the world, because it was not just a crime against it's
Mhm.
a crime against the world,
And and
and
even if you
continues to be.
and people try to paint rebellion as if it's synonymous with revenge.
Right, right.
Even in hearing about Toussaint Louverture and
Mhm.
Nat
Mhm.
Turner,
Mhm.
even revenges all around the world.
Mhm.
Um, and I hate to I'm not gonna say it.
Yeah, rebellion.
When we look at rebellion around the world, we know that that is not revenge. We know that
Right.
those people were pushed to the edge of a cliff, and
Yeah.
because survival is a
Mm-hmm.
natural human instinct
Mm-hmm.
that if you push a people to the end of a cliff, you're forcing them to have to turn around and
Yeah.
push
Yeah.
back.
And push back. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
even and we know this
Yeah.
because even as young people, when young people rebel in little ways, it's not
Mm-hmm.
revenge. It has nothing to
Mm-hmm.
do with
Right.
you.
Right.
It's not an attack. You
Right.
push them to the very edge. You push them to the very edge. And even when young people with one another, when I used to see fights break
Mm-hmm.
out, they're always like, come on now. I don't want to have to do
Uh-huh.
it.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And after the fight,
Yeah.
look what you
Yep.
done made me do.
Yeah.
Like,
And then they mad because you made them do
I
it.
know exactly, and you know the kids, even the kids on the sidelines know.
Uh-huh. Yep. They're like,
They'll even
uh-oh.
say,
Uh-oh.
basically, don't hold him back. Don't basically.
Yep.
He asked for
Yep.
this.
Yep.
He asked it. Don't even
Yep.
hold him back. Don't even hold him back.
Yep. Yep.
Well, they say this is
Yep.
between them. This is
That's between
between
them.
them.
Yep. Yep. He asked for it. He asked
Yeah,
for it. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah. So,
Absolutely.
um, I
Absolutely.
think as a society, as a people, whether it be in small micro moments with one another, or
Mm-hmm.
in the larger greater scheme, we can simulate karma so that karma
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to step in.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can simulate,
Mm-hmm.
facilitate, create a balancing
Mm-hmm.
act
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
jolts us forward, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be in an
Mm-hmm.
interaction with parent child, parent teacher, boss
Mm-hmm.
supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
We can do it. And even I remember at our old place of employment, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm talking about, the
Right.
offices in the new building.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
There were already a lot of unfortunate things happening as an organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I set up in an office because there was ample space in this place.
Mm-hmm.
This place was temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I deserve an office. I work my ass off. I'm gonna get me an
Right.
office, and I'm gonna set up in this vacant office. And it came down from up above that I had to move into a cubicle, which is fine. I had a cute little cubicle too. But you even said to him, he was like, people like, you can make this right. Like, you can
Right. Yeah.
facilitate a
Yep.
balancing out. Not just let her have the office. Let everyone
Gotta have, yeah.
have the office. And they moved
Yeah.
me out of that office to make room for someone that they were bringing on, a vacant position. That person
Yeah.
started. That person started like 2 weeks before I quit,
Mm-hmm.
before I resigned, and we weren't even in the office anyway. Then COVID happened. We weren't in the office anyway.
Right. Right.
You see,
Right.
like, karma still stepped in.
Karma steps
Now
in.
everyone's office is gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's and you're right, we can facilitate it. We can make the choice because there's and the way to satisfy karma, a principal way is to seek forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Is to seek forgiveness. I mean, karma will factor that into the equation. If you repent, if you change your thinking, and seek forgiveness, karma will factor that in.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a price to pay in terms of the balance, but that puts a little something on the other side of the scale.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I mean that's part of the way back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know, Olivia, if some people just don't want it or don't believe it because it's all part of a healing process. But I know I just remember some people in training, adults, saying before, you don't ever apologize to a child. That's weakness. You never apologize to
Mm-hmm.
them. You're the adult and you never apologize. And I just, I say how sad that is, because, and I say it now in the training, I said, so when your time comes, and there's a choice between them taking care of you or putting you in a home,
Mm-hmm.
I said, then you won't have to sit and wonder why whatever choice was made. I
Yeah.
said, because whatever you did to them has hardened them such, because you never say I'm sorry, you never apologize. It's hardened them. So they'll say things to you like, I'm doing this for your own good. Or they're saying, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you,
Mm-hmm.
and all these things are going to ring back because
Mm-hmm.
that's the nature of the universe,
Yeah.
um,
Like you said, it's
because you didn't.
energy. It's
Yeah,
the
it is.
it's the laws of science. Energy
Yeah, and it's
cannot be created or
created or
destroyed.
destroyed. You're right.
It
So
only
it's got
changes
to go
forms.
transform, right? And it's got to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to go somewhere. So it can move from you into them, and now your heart is soft, and now you want some mercy, some caring. You want some empathy. All the things that your child is asking you for now.
Mm-hmm.
Now then you're going to want it. And then you're going to be looking into the eyes of who you were
Mm-hmm.
um, at that time, not understanding, why this so-called love that's supposed to be there by virtue of your blood,
Mm-hmm.
but was never nurtured in a kind and caring way, why it's not there to be found, because that's not what
Yeah.
you put into this person. You didn't put that into this person, so it's not there.
Yeah,
You know.
and the other way that it goes is that, and we know this, but
Mm-hmm.
grandparents have a way of, like, now they've transformed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
now they've changed their minds and they're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
them, i.e., you, now that you have
Mm-hmm.
your kids. And
Mm-hmm.
everyone's complaint is the same. And what happens
Yep.
is they were a certain way. When you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
My grandchildren have given me a second chance at
Mm-hmm.
parenting, really a
Mm-hmm.
second chance at life, because this is
Yep.
the lifeline. I
Yep.
I am completely opposite with these grandkids than I
Yep.
was with you.
Yep.
To the point, like,
Yep.
don't yell at my grandbaby. And
Yep.
it's so
Yep.
funny because we see it on Instagram where kids will, like, they'll simulate kids calling their grandmother, like, "Mama's
Uh-huh.
doing this, Mama's doing that. Can I come to your house? Mama said I can't come to your
Mm-hmm.
house." Then the mom calls the daughter of the son. "Why you tell them they can't come over here? Bring my
Uh-huh.
child, bring my
Yeah.
grandbaby over here." Like, your parents are
Yep.
the exact opposite with
Yep.
your children than they were with you, and I had to release that, or
Yeah.
else
Yeah.
I was going to be contributing to a similar dynamic
Yeah.
when,
Yeah.
my parents, my mom has turned a new leaf.
Yeah. Yeah.
My
Yeah.
child is the new leaf.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not about
Mm-hmm.
to be the rusty old leaf that done fall
Yeah.
and dwindled all
Yep.
fall, like.
And we have to be insightful enough. There's a saying that's out there is I'm paraphrasing. You have to be willing to accept the apology that you never got.
Mhm.
We have to be willing to see this, when our parents are treating our kids better than they treated us.
Mhm.
We have to be able to see that for what it is,
Yeah.
that this is the, for lack of a better word, this is the apology.
Mhm.
This is the, now I know better. I should have
Yeah.
done this. Yeah, I was wrong. I could have
Mhm.
done things differently. And we have to see that, even if they don't ever tell it to us, even if
Mhm.
they don't say it to us, and
Yeah.
even if they, snap back into the old habit. You better bring my grandbaby over here. You know,
Mhm.
even if they snap back into that energy with
Yeah.
us, we
Into the
have to
dynamic that
understand.
they created with
Yeah,
us. That's
yeah,
the only
yeah,
dynamic that
exactly.
they have. That's the only way of
Right,
communicating with us.
right,
And we said
exactly,
it
exactly.
a few episodes back when talking about dynamics between black women and black men. But
Yeah,
again, sometimes the changed behavior is the apology. And that
yeah,
goes
it
for
is.
our
Yeah,
parents
that's
as
it.
well. They not gonna
Yeah,
sit
that's it.
they not gonna
Right,
sit you down,
right,
child.
right,
Accountability, what?
right,
Especially with
right.
them boomers.
Yeah,
Accountability,
yeah,
who? We don't know her. They're
right,
not gonna
right,
sit you down, but they are
right.
going to try their hardest to
Yeah,
prove to you through their interactions with your children that they have changed, that they are
yeah,
soft. accept
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
accept them. The changed
Yeah.
behavior is the acknowledgement, and
It's
it's the
mhm.
apology.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it's
And it's the
it's
way
the
back.
apology. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the way back for them. And in that is healing.
Mhm.
In that is the healing. That's why I said when my mom said that, that was for me, that was the healing. That was, never saying, I'm sorry that I beat you, Mustafa, or whatever, but her saying, I acknowledge it, I would have done things differently. And I completely agree with what he's teaching and what he's doing now. I understand that that was the healing. That
Mhm.
was I recognized that and I saw that. And she wasn't doing what she was doing to be doing it to me. It's all she knew
Yeah.
at the time. It's the only thing that she knew, and understanding that, I was able to, to forgive, and we were able to grow, as friends as a result. So it's a little bit different from how we normally articulate the way back, but it still has all of the elements of it,
Mhm.
because in it there is an admission that of what was done, that and the effect of it, and um the change is the apology, and
Mhm.
treating our kids differently, that is the fixing it, and
Yeah.
and and that commitment to loving and treating this grandchild, a better way,
Mhm.
that is the commitment,
Mhm.
and it is up to us, to accept that, to forgive and to kind of to
Yeah.
move on, and for us not to adopt it, you know, um, and for us to recognize when our parents step in with our kids that they're really helping us, when they
Mhm.
stop us and say, don't, you know, be kind to that child. Don't be nice. Stop yelling at that child. That they are really helping us. They're
Mhm.
fixing those parts of us that could otherwise go awry.
And
If we don't.
I think that is so important because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, parents our parents are on the other side of parenting. They
Mm-hmm.
have a view that we don't have. We just
Right.
don't
Right.
have. I just entered
Right.
it. I just entered
Right.
this phase. They have a view
Right.
that we don't have, and they not only know but they feel the reality that the
Mm-hmm.
relationship that you have with your child is the one that you earned, and it's the one
Right.
that you really it's the one that you deserve.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Right.
And
People
that
don't want to
is
hear
the
that, but yeah. Right.
cold, harsh truth.
Right.
That's why I had to
Mm-hmm.
change it, because I was like, earned, no,
Yeah.
that's too soft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deserve. Okay?
Deserve.
That is
Right.
the cold, hard
Yeah.
truth. So
Yeah.
whenever a parent steps in and says, hey, don't hit that child. Don't yell at that
Mm-hmm.
child. Don't do this. Don't do that. It doesn't sound good because they done
Right.
snap back into the same dynamic that traumatized us once upon a time. But at
Uh-huh.
the end of the day, you have to be able to listen between the lines and understand that they're trying to prevent the dynamic that they have with you.
Mhm. Mhm.
They're trying to make
Mhm.
sure they parents at the end of the day, whether they have the means to facilitate it or not, they want their children to be the best in the
They do.
entire world.
World, they
And
do.
you used to even ask this question in our
Mhm.
trainings, like even
Yeah.
even parents that are strung out, preoccupied
Mhm.
with completely unimportant things, let them give birth to a child. If they had a
Mhm.
choice, that child would be the president of the United States. Not that that
Yeah.
is an honorable position in this day and age, but you get what I'm
But still,
saying.
yeah.
Even if
Yeah,
they
yep.
don't have the
Yeah.
means to guarantee that for their child, they still want that for their
Yeah, yeah.
child.
They do. Indeed they do. Indeed
Yeah.
they do. Yeah. Indeed they do. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
don't let a dynamic with your parent cloud your foresight.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
And that's something that I've had to learn too, because Lord, I'm so
Yeah.
annoyed.
Yeah.
And I just have to
Yeah.
have a talking with myself, like, Olivia,
Yeah.
fight it.
You had to say self.
And I said, self, I needed to have a me and me conversation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
To
yeah.
decide to do differently. So
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I'm glad we discussed this in a way that did not harp on the punishment itself, the
Yeah.
thing itself,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there is a broader picture.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is a broader picture with this. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so I think, yeah, there's a broader picture. Like I said, even when I think of Gaza and Palestine and
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
worldly context,
Yeah.
there's a larger picture.
Mhm.
And so I'm trying to think of a journal prompt. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Things like good ideas pop in my head, and then I forget the more I talk about something else.
Yeah.
But um,
Yeah.
hmm,
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was thinking of is uh one of the things you said, a person that's a rebel, is is uh is really trying to survive, or it's,
mm,
what is it, like that there's still a need. And I guess for me it would be to kind of think about looking at the world and
mm,
looking at all sides and looking at the broader picture. I guess what I would consider is what needs, and we can even think about this other people, what needs do people have, or would someone, if we think about somebody that needs to be punished, or we think about someone that needs to pay a price for something that they've done, what was the internal conversation, or what was the need
mm.
that they were trying to meet? I think is what I would ask. And even if we think back on ourselves,
That's what
I think I would
yeah.
think back on, think back to the thing that everybody can remember something that we got punished for.
Mm,
Everybody can think about that one beating, that one grounding, that one, the thing that you remember most in terms of what you got punished for, and just ask yourself, um, what was the need
mm.
that you were trying to meet at that time,
Yeah, what were you
and
fighting for? What
what were you fighting
what
for,
did they
and
interrupt? What did the
right, right,
punishment interrupt?
yeah, what did the punishment interrupt,
Mm,
right, and how would you have liked them to respond?
mm.
So those two things, I think. What did that, because that's what punishment does. It interrupts.
Yeah.
It interrupts that need. So what did it interrupt, and how would you have liked them, or how would you have wanted them to respond?
Mm,
That's, I think that's something we can think about. You know,
yeah.
and then we can think more broader on that. But I think that's a good place to start, because you can connect with it. Everybody can think about something.
Mm,
Um, Really quickly, one was coming to mind now, and I thought I deserved it. I remember one time, I was on the safety patrol. We used to stand on the corner and help direct traffic, the kids coming to school in elementary school, and we were getting ready to go out on our post, and we were inside, and the guy who was in charge, was telling us to line up, or something. He had said something that made me angry, and he
mm,
said, and he made me. So I said, I wish I had never asked. I wish I had never asked to be on his patrol. He took my patrol belt, and that was it. I was off the patrol because of what I said,
mm,
and he thought he was teaching me a lesson about being careful about what I say.
mm,
And for a while, I thought it was my fault. I thought I deserved to be kicked off this opportunity of
mm,
being a safety patrol. But later in life, I understood that that was a punishment that I didn't deserve, that I did
mm,
have the right to express my emotion, that he did it because he was upset at what I said. And
mm,
at one point, he was like my favorite teacher. I was in the fifth grade at the time. But
mm.
that's what I remember of him more than anything, more than any of the field trips, more than any other things. I remember that, you know.
And I will say this too, because and this is just specifically talking about parent child interactions.
Mhm.
But when you punish your child, remember we said that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only
Mhm.
be transferred, changed forms,
Right.
My degree ain't in science, but you get what I'm saying.
No, but
So,
you're right.
thank you. So, I
Mhm.
feel like someone just yelled from the back of the church house. Thank you. That's right. There you go, Pastor.
Yeah.
Pastor ain't say nothing but a word. But anyway,
Right.
but when I it teaches it teaches young people to rationalize at the lowest part of the scale discomfort,
Uh-huh. Mhm.
at the highest part of the scale abuse.
Abuse.
And then you
Mm.
get young people that can accept that, and
Mhm.
that's the problem with punishment. Or and now we got to talk about adultism, but that is the
Yeah.
problem with punishment and adultism.
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
if I can convince you that I can create a negative experience for you that you did not consent to, simply because I
Mhm.
am your parent, once you have that once you have that cognitive baseline
Mhm.
understanding, you can accept it
Mhm.
anywhere. You can
Yep.
accept any forms of discomfort, and you get trained. Again, you get good at whatever you practice, whether you practice it by choice or not. You
Mhm.
you get really really good at
Mhm.
rationalizing discomfort
Mhm.
everywhere, whether it be in friend groups, in the
Mhm.
workplace, in romantic
Mhm.
relationships.
Mhm.
uh
Mhm.
Even when we talk about, let's be for real, even when we talk about the hood and how they have an imperial
Yeah.
relationship with the United States
Exactly.
government,
There you go. There you
you
go.
train an
Yeah.
entire community of people to just accept,
Yep. Yep.
simply because I'm not an elected
Yep.
official. I have to
Yep.
stay in the hood. I have to endure the hood. And so when we all make an agreement, and mind you, this is a forced agreement, that we are
Mhm.
going to raise our children in this way, we become a powerhouse for generations and
There you
generations and
go.
generations of people that look just like us, that accept discomfort
There
and
you go.
abuse simply because we get really, really, really good at that.
Yep.
And we plant the
Yep.
seed for um the prison, the school to prison
Mhm.
pipeline. We plant the
Mhm.
seed for domestic violence,
Mhm.
for fights in
Mhm.
school, for drug abuse, because it is
Mhm.
drug abuse, for alcohol abuse.
Mhm.
We create a generation after generation of people that accept all forms of abuse, whether they are self-inflicted or external.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it was Zora Neale Hurston. I'm paraphrasing the end of what she said. And they will say that you enjoyed it.
Mhm.
You know, create this situation. We participate, and they will say that you
Mhm.
enjoyed it. And we do, because we will. I mean, we will enforce it upon ourselves.
Mhm.
You know, yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. That all I can say to that is damn. You know, when you put it that way, you
Mhm.
know, and when we face it, um, we see what we have to do, and this is why it is absolutely imperative
Mhm.
that we get this right with our kids,
Mhm. Yeah. And
because
even,
that.
whew, yeah, it
Mm,
is, it is. And even
mm,
because I let's say you're listening to a conversation like this for the very first time, and our way back just seems overwhelming or convoluted.
mm,
Start by giving your child a choice. Just
mhm.
start by giving your child a choice. That alone will change
Yeah, yeah,
so much. Even if you have
yeah.
to, and I'm not going to say punish, even if you have to create logical consequences for your child, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Okay, you acted up in class, right? You need to take some time. You need to take some time to think about this. Do a mindless activity to think about this. You can either vacuum or you can do the dishes.
mhm.
Give Just start with a choice.
Yeah,
Just start
yeah,
with a choice.
yeah,
Even that is woefully different and
yeah,
better than a punishment.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, Olivia, I think that tops it. I
Mm.
think that tops it. because we've given away back, and we've given some alternatives, and we've given, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that tops it. Yeah, yeah. So this was a really, I think, a really good good discussion and exchange.
Mm.
Gives a lot of folks a lot to think about, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to be processing this
I
probably for the next
know,
hour
I
or so.
know, I know. I almost feel like we have to do a I'll create the poll, but
uh,
I almost feel like we have to do a part 2 of this episode, or
yeah,
even a deeper dive, whether we do
yeah,
specifically spanking or
yeah.
adultism. But
Hmm.
just vote, in the Spotify poll. Should we do a part 2? Do you want more
Yeah,
of the same?
yeah.
And
More.
we'll make that happen.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, but thank you so much for
Okay.
joining us
Yep.
for this episode of Generational Curse Words, and we will see you next week.
See you next time.